Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Great. Okay, so can you tell me your name and your background and why you're here?
Okay, my name's Christian.
Sorry, I forgot to say, if you ignore that I'm here, and you
sorry.
just talk
Oh,
to Grace.
Yes.
Talk
Yeah,
straight
so
to
it's sort of
Grace.
a filmed conversation
As opposed to down the barrel. That's a relief, actually. Yeah, good. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, so my name's Christian Burgess. I'm Vice Principal and Director of Drama of the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. And my background is that I'm from Beverley in East Yorkshire, Grace. And I had a teacher there who intervened with the headmaster and came up with an alternative to the rest of the term in detention, which is what I was faced with, and said, if you come and join us in the school play, you can get out of being in detention for the rest of the term. And I said, no, it's all right, I'll take the detention. And then, I trained at Guildhall. I worked as a professional actor for many, many years, and slightly by mistake, found myself back here donkey's years later. And just because of timing, I think, I discovered I liked the environment and that I found it challenging in the way that I hadn't anticipated, working with young actors. And so I've been here for 16 years or something.
Can you tell me about your role at Guildhall and what are your responsibilities and what do you tackle?
Okay. Well, I'm part of a small executive team that looks at the forward strategic momentum of the institution as a whole. We meet regularly and debate topics that are fantastically interesting and sometimes deeply dull. I am also director of the acting department, really. Historically, I was in charge of both acting and technical theatre, but technical theatre has quite correctly been separated out now. And Ben, who's been wonderful director of the technical theatre department, has been slightly elevated and is going to become a vice principal with the responsibility for that whole strand of the activity. I'm involved with pretty much everything in connection with the acting offer. I think I'd bore you if I started trying to give you my daily list of jobs.
That's fine. Okay, so what does the word artist mean to you?
Artist, it's such a... that's a hard one. Somebody... God, that's a very, very good question. I don't know the answer. Sorry.
Do you think of yourself as an artist?
I like to think of myself as an artist. I think it took me a long time to really accept that actors could legitimately think of themselves as artists, which is very linked, that reservation is very linked to why I'm kind of interested to have this conversation about the question of entrepreneurship. I think being an artist implies that you have moments of sublime inspiration. And it's a very catch-all term, artist. But I also think it implies that you have to work to be heard or seen or noticed. And that you might have a perspective on the world that could illuminate somebody else's experience of the world. Sorry, I'm answering the previous question, or trying to.
And what does the word entrepreneur mean to you?
Well, again, it's a slightly uneasy word, but in the context of the world in which I live, it's about finding the courage to understand that you have the potential as an actor to be proactive in terms of the work that you make. Going back to the business of how you train to be an actor, which you understand, you've been through it. It's always struck me that, you know, we talk about, you know, there's another kind of buzz expression, transferable skills. And actors are very driven when they're training to imagine themselves as spending their entire waking lives in theatres or in front of cameras, doing what they hope to keep busy with. But, as we all know, the reality for most people is that that's not how life pans out, and nor is it actually how necessarily people want their lives to pan out once they understand the implications of what it is to work all day, every day. It's too much. So if you accept the sort of tired old model that suggests that you should wait for the phone call from your agent, who is separate again from, you know, the agent is at the long line of people who stand between you and work. If that's all you do, and you say, okay, so the only way I can be free to get my phone call and to be able to jump when they say jump is by working in a bar, then you are building yourself a very, very limited, dependent existence. And going back to the thing about the training, it's often struck me that what you learn to do is become persuasive, which is actually a brilliant training for any manager. You know, playing the intention is all about persuading somebody else to do something, to change. And that's what managers have to do. They have to try and get somebody to do something, but they might not know how to look them in the eye and hold them and convince them that what they're proposing is viable and a good idea. So actors are remarkably ready to enter a much broader landscape of employment than they perhaps wish to think, I think. And it also suggests that they should be well placed to get together with equally well prepared peers and say, we've got a voice, we're entitled to our voice, we've got something to say, we live in the world. The purpose of our work is to reflect something about this world we live in, about the human condition. Let's say it. It sounds really easy, and of course there's the terrible moment where you think, oh shit, who's going to pay for this? But there's also lots of people who cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, call themselves artists, who want to enable, which is, I suppose, the quality of a brilliant producer. Somebody who's not jealous of the artists, but who wants to align themselves to allow, to enable, a piece of art, a piece of work to happen. So that's the sort of shift, I guess, into what I would say is entrepreneurial thinking, I have a right to do some work and to believe quite genuinely that it's worth attention.
So how do you, in your teaching and your directing, how do you provoke that in your students? How do you spot that spark and give it fire?
Well, it's funny this, because yesterday we were in a meeting having watched one of the after the first year modern project. We were talking and I announced that in my opinion it's very, very difficult to teach confidence. And after the meeting, Brodie, in his, I think you've talked to Brodie, in his inimitable way, said, listen, you've got, get off that. Don't say that, because actually you can. And he said, I've seen you do it. And so, and we had a short conversation about it, and I took his point, because I think what he was attacking me for, quite correctly, was a sort of taking a position which suggests that is a quality which is absolutely dependent on the individual. And I did think about it, and I think he's right. I still stand by the fact that it's not something that you can logically teach. But what you can do is create an environment, a space, in which people are liberated to engage with their sense of humour, their sexuality, their heart, all these, different parts of us that are so crucial. And in an environment in which they don't feel that they are on trial, or that if they fail to deliver a line in a particular way that they are therefore or automatically bad. And there's a sort of X factor, I think, in terms of liberating a group of people collectively, which I've been interested in and have been sort of pursuing as a question for a long, long time. And I have understood after many years that the rough moment when I thought, actually, I don't have to keep trying to prove myself, was when my work started to get a bit more productive. Is that the answer?
How do you, when you talked about creating a space where people feel liberated, how do you do that practically in your rehearsal room? How do you create an environment where students can feel empowered to take a risk?
I provoke them, and I try to, these days I always announce that I'm going to try and stay cheerful in advance of the project, and that I would be very, very grateful if they would try to stay cheerful too. Because no play is written about something cheerful, no good play. It's always about dark places. If you engage with any great play, it's something ghastly. So you have to have a very robust appetite for delving into dark places to want to go there in the first place. And I try to create an energy within the group which is anarchic, but I suppose I would describe it as the discipline of anarchy. How to find the potential of anarchy within a disciplined context. That's broadly what I'm trying to do.
So, what is that discipline? Is it
Well, it's
obedience?
apart from anything. No, it's not obedience. It's disobedience. It's disobedience. Because I don't know the answers. You know, I might have an idea, and my ideas always come in the present. They're not. I cannot sit at home and kind of go, okay, well, A should move to B and lift the teacup, and then that moment's going to be beautiful. I can't see it. It's not the way my imagination works. My imagination works when I see an actor suggest something. I go, oh yeah, that's it, you know, and go. So. I think it's, yeah, but you have to be there, you know. So when I say discipline, I mean, and that goes further really. That's linked to this whole idea that we approach the work with reasons to be cheerful rather than reasons to be neurotic or upset or diminished or insecure. You know, we're all insecure. It's a given. Otherwise, we wouldn't be even contemplating doing this ridiculous thing. So we have to understand that, and maybe that's linked to, you know, maybe what being an artist is living in some kind of torment a lot of the time. But you have to have an appetite for that and be curious about it and want to explore it, I think.
What obstacles do you face as a teacher? Do students ever try to destroy what you set up, or do you encourage that, or when is it tricky?
What obstacles do I face? Well, I'm lazy. That's an obstacle. I don't do enough prep. I don't know the play well enough when I start. And I like to tell myself that that's deliberate, but it's not really, it's laziness. So that's an obstacle in myself, a reluctance to engage with the material until the actors are there. And I'm being slightly facetious about this thing about telling myself that, but I think what I am good at is spotting the potential in a moment that happens in the present in a rehearsal room and finding a way to develop that potential into something that might have legs. I don't it doesn't interest me, the idea of a sort of auteur's approach to theatre. You know, I've been fortunate, I suppose, in my acting career to have worked with people who had huge reputations, but the people that I've really felt most engaged with have not been people that made me feel inadequate. I try not to encourage the actors to feel inadequate. There's everything conspires to make the actor think, oh, there's no hope for me in this. You know, I can't do this. It's a given that's some part of the struggle, isn't it? So I would say to an actor, yeah, you can, and anyway, you have to. So let's do it. But you know, you've got to do it. Otherwise, we may as well give up and go home. So why not do it rather than not do it? Let's go there, you know.
So a lot of that is about saying yes, isn't it? For the student to say yes. How often do you say yes to the student?
I hope all the time. Look, you know, I could think of 1,000 instances where I've said no to a student. Would a handstand be helpful at this moment? No. Not really, but find whatever it is that inspired the suggestion. Find another language for that. You know, again, it's a silly example, but when I was in a production of Hamlet years ago, the actor who was understudying Hamlet was so excited to go on that he decided to introduce handstands into his performance. Well, sort of, you know, front flips, or whatever they're called. I can't do them, but and it was grotesque because it was completely inappropriate. It wasn't linked to the demands of the play or the story. It was linked to a kind of egomaniacal excess of that he felt for the first time in his life, perhaps, free to offer. But it was a response to some kind of rage about his life and his career that had nothing to do with the actual project. So I think you've got to try and find a way to, you know, find a language in the rehearsal room that is connected with the material that you're working on as well.
So, just to go into that, how do you, often in this conversation we talk about entrepreneurial skills as other to the beating heart of the craft of the classical actor. Do you think it should be thought of like that?
No.
So how do you encourage your students to kind of think outside the box and imagine a future other than just...
Well, I think it goes back to question number one, you know, about what is an artist. And I think but maybe it's universal, but certainly in the sort of heritage of the profession in this country, the thinking is that the actor is in a sense, the stooge that delivers a requirement of some greater thinker and is the voice for the playwright with the guidance of a director. But if we allow ourselves to be limited as the actor by that thinking, then it's a denial of a massive amount of sort of creative energy. And actors are not necessarily formally educated, but they have this intelligence, what we might call an actor's intelligence, which is profoundly useful. So I think the separation is a false one and an unhelpful one, and that we must encourage people in training to believe that they can find a mechanism to make work which is not within the traditional framework. I don't know what that might end up looking like necessarily, but yeah, it's crucial that we do that.
So how do you do that at the moment?
Well, we talk about it. I don't think that we probably teach, practically speaking, enough. There are classes in the curriculum which are concerned with this, but the challenge is to actually really infect the thinking of the students so that, I mean, to some extent they're doing it for themselves, because, you know, compared to, say, even 5 years ago, certainly with 10 years ago, the students are much, much more demanding in terms of what they want to get out of their time here. Maybe that's because there's a climate where they see themselves much more as customers or as clients of, you know, and they're paying a fortune to be here. And they're not stupid. Plus the world's changed so that, you know, historically the actor was every parent's nightmare, that their child was going to become an actor. Oh God, we're going to support you for the rest of our lives. you know, you'll never have a job. Well, the whole world's like that in a way now. There's no guarantees about anything. So, and I think that weirdly, the worlds of art and commerce have started to integrate. You know, I think it's undeniable that art is a huge money-generating activity. So it's just getting people to think, okay, I have the right to believe that I can do this, whatever it might be. Not, I don't have the right. I'm merely a humble player. You know.
So do you think that?
I think that, you know, one of the strengths of the training that's on offer here is that it's benefited from a long developmental journey. However, the danger is that we think of as sacrosanct every single thing that has ever been acknowledged as having worked. Now, as you know, the ethos of ensemble is very, very powerful, and I don't think we need to mess with that. The ethos of the essential nature of delivering craft is sacrosanct, and I don't think we need to mess with that. However, what we don't manage to do is expose the students to the world outside while they're here. They live in a bubble, which is actually rather a privileged bubble, where all the rehearsal rooms have got a clean floor. You know, there's nice theatres, there's technical theatre students rushing about to try and change their hat for them, and an expectation grows that that's what the real world is like. And part of the question is, how do you help people understand actually the world's much dirtier place than that? And it's also a question which is sort of linked to the to one of seeing the world with more open eyes. So I would love it, you know, if it were possible to ship the students out into another world, into a different environment, and force them to make a piece of work that was for wherever they went. I think that, as an example, would be a very, very useful exercise. It's finding the time to do it, because as soon as you say, we need 4 weeks out, somebody says, but that's my work, you know. So, but who's it for? And then that debate goes on all the time, and keeping the needs of the students, which is connected to the future, alive, sometimes requires a decision might be at the expense of a venerable practitioner who, I rest my case. Dodgy old stuff, that is.
Okay, 1 second. So what help or support is currently available to students after graduation?
Well, that's a good question. And I think the reality at the moment is that we do our best if people come and ask for something. But it's one of the questions which is really live at the moment, about how we could work with people that have gone through the training to develop their practice, and which could be mutually beneficial, because in a way the alumni are the most powerful advocates that are alive and well and out in the world that we have, and we don't have a good enough and dynamic enough relationship with the alumni. We've always been dreaming about having a graduate company and so on and so forth. And we are working with alumni in terms of the widening participation agenda. you know, the diversity agenda, all of these things are hugely important. But in terms of a really direct, creative debate, we're not doing enough. It's a challenge, and you know, something that we've struggled with. And frankly, one knows that the building is largely empty on a Sunday and that most actors are loafing about on a Sunday. But I got to a point in my life where I did not want to come in here on a Sunday. Not just because I live in Shropshire, but because I can't, I'm knackered, you know. So, but it's trying to think, but that's sort of linked to a preconceived notion that it needs me to lead it. It doesn't. It could be you to lead that. But you've got to have the conversation, probably with me or somebody like me, to enable that to happen. And you might not feel ready to have that conversation. So I should be a bit more proactive about saying, right, come on, Grace, what about this idea? You know, so there's a lot to do, a lot. Do you want me to talk about École des Écoles at all, or not? Or is that not really relevant to this conversation?
I think it'd be great.
Only just to register that I think it's a very helpful and important forum for. So far, it's really only been about teachers exchanging, and I can't remember when it started up, but we all met in a restaurant in Lyon, and it was a very good dinner. And it's gone from there. And this year, because I'm leaving, they very graciously asked me to become I think it's called an honorary member or something. So I'm happy about that, because it means that I can continue to have a dialogue with them. And as you know, I'm going to go and work at Fonat, so maybe that can be productive. We are notoriously insular, and we have a superiority conflict, what's the word? Complex, thank you, about British theatre. And we're not hugely interested in what anybody else is doing. It is quite useful, actually, to recognise that there are some other countries, particularly across it's not very far across the English Channel. They speak different languages, God forbid, and they work in different ways with driven by different sets of obsessions. It can only be useful to learn from their experience and also to meet them and hopefully work with them sometimes. And as you know, in San Miniato, that goes on. But we sit in our, in England, thinking that we're the best, and not always.
Great. Okay, I think we should finish up then. So yeah, what we're trying to figure out is how you can identify entrepreneurial talent, and how we can help staff to do that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I really think that it's lurking, probably, in anybody who's successful in getting through the rigorous audition process. They must have some entrepreneurial talent to persuade the panel to let them in. And I think that it's very, very linked to this question of, can I do it? Which most young actors beat themselves up with every night. It's not even as difficult a challenge as that one. So it's just linked to finding confidence to say, I've got something to say, and it might not automatically be stupid. That's what I would say.
Great. Brody phrased it really well as being able to see a pre-spark.
Yeah, a pre-spark.
Pre-spark.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it's not necessarily it's not just those people that show promise in that area. Because they might not have imagined it. So you have to set up an environment where that can be imagined, along with everything else, along with how do I become a lemur.
Yeah, do you think there's space in the training for both of those things, as opposed to taking them in isolation? Do you think there's space that while you're training the actor's craft, you're also training them to be business people and to be survivalists?
I would hope so, because I don't think you should remove the possibility of ambition and aspiration for success, whatever that means, in the profession that you've chosen to go into. And I don't see it as a module. It's absolutely fundamental to the business of finding your creative voice in the broadest sense. It's linked all the way through, I think. Yeah.
That's great. Very interesting, yeah, because we've talked quite a lot about artistic voice with candidates, and actually it's sometimes something